I am back, and today's video, I would say it's pretty good though. It does have tactics, pawn structure, opening, and it's even though it's 3-0, but it does have some quality moves. I was playing white, and we have 1d4. And this is nothing new. You can see the rating went up a little bit, 2731. Where's 2800? But I have my opponent play knight f6. And the next move is the next generation kind of move. People will play this for the next 100 years, not even 50 years. The next move is here. Bishop g5. A little bit story about this opening. I actually played this opening for a good amount of years. 10 years. I don't want to say 20, but 10 years. Let's make it 10. And I played this online and over the board. And one of the reasons that I made it to the master level is actually based on this opening. Master level over the board tournaments. And I played this against international masters and even grandmasters. And I was able to actually beat international master with this opening. This is called the Tremposky. It's not a top tier opening, just to put it simply here. It's not the next generation or the past generation. It's actually typical opening. It's not meant to be like a top tier or anything. It's not the London. You could argue that this is close. Bishop f4, bishop g5. It's a London. It's not. It does have its own stuff though. There's some theory in this kind of stuff, but it's not meant to be like a replacement for the top tier opening, as I mentioned, London, Catalan, Queen's Gambit. The reason I played this for a lot of years because it takes people away from the main openings. You usually play c4, right? You're looking for Nimzo Indian, Queen's Gambit, Catalan. You don't play any of these, right? He just simply plays in Tremposky. And that's the reason why I was able to pick this one and see, what kind of responses people would do. Some people would not able to handle it very well, but it's easy to play against, to be honest. So we have e6. That's one of the ways you could play against it. And I played the next move is e4. Now, this move is interesting because now black has a choice. And the next, his next move is pretty good. h6, and this move does make a lot of sense. Believe it or not, this move does make a lot of sense in a good. And the reason for that, if you let's say went back, or you went back here, you're looking at knight takes c4. Just to be precise here, if you go to g5, knight takes c4, and that would simply lose a pawn. And that's the reason why, and it doesn't matter where you're going, you go to the other side of the board, right? If you just go back here, you're still losing e4. So that means that I do have to take. And this one is interesting, right? I keep telling people over and over again, especially students, my students, I tell them that two bishops now, it's something that you probably have to try to hang on to. If you have a trade that allows two bishops, as long the position is open, then you could do so. This one is wide open, I think. Wide open, in my own opinion. So the two bishops now or later could prove to be a problem for white. So, but nevertheless, white goal here is to control the center, and that's the reason why they call this the Tremposky center variation. White goal here is to maintain this center as much as possible and to try to tweak it in a way that makes this bishop, not as strong and kind of keep this bishop away from being active or inactive for some time. So let's say you play something like e5. That's not a good choice. He could play queen d8 and let's say knight f3. I suppose d6 or something. This may be the, if this were to happen, knight f3 or something, that maybe d6. And black would slowly, get his bishop involved sooner or later, right? You don't want to do this with white. You want to be more practical. And that's actually my next choice is c3. That move is more to the point, meaning that the bishop doesn't have this check. It also protects the center on d4. It's more toward the center. You want to protect this because he could play c5. And that's one of the moves. c5 it could be a playable move. Black attempt is to create more lines to basically compete on the center and to open up for the two bishops, right? So my opponent played this. This one is also playable. I mean, I like to see it from White's perspective because the bishop goes to g7, but I still have this intact, meaning, but he could always play c5 later, which kind of try to open up lines. But, you know, this is okay. It is playable ideas for black. I play bishop d3, and he plays bishop g7, and I go here. So what is the point of knight e2 as opposed to knight f3, right? Why not you go to knight f3? Knight a2 is my choice, and usually is my choice when I play OTB tournaments or, you know, a competitive game. The reason for knight a2 is you want to play f4. You want to make this f4 pawn like a way to attack, and also supporting the center, like supporting e5. So when you play knight f3, you're blocking access to the f4 pawn, right? So I could play knight e2, I could castle and then f4. And that would contribute to the center and also potential attack, potentially even f5. So that's the point of knight e2. So d6, I think this move is in line, but you know, he's basically stopping e5, but I could castle, and then he played knight c6. This move is a little bit strange. I don't normally see this. Maybe knight d7 castles. The reason for knight c6 is maybe not as active. You kind of disallowing the potential of c5, right? Usually black could play later or preparing kind of a break on c5. You try to compete on the center as much as possible. Knight c6 blocking axis here, and it doesn't make too much sense in a way to me. And you know, I proceed with f4. The original plan. So now, you know, if you're considering breaking on e5, that's not going to work because I could simply take. That's a free pawn, and that's one of the drawback for black, is because that's going to be a free pawn, and you're also opening up the rook file, you know, for no reason, and it's just simply just dropping a pawn, and also white maintaining the center. It's not like he's not, and this is very, very strong from white's perspective. So he castled, and I played e5. This move maybe not necessary. Maybe I could play knight d2, but e5 maybe I just simply play knight, you know, just simply knight d2 would have been okay. And knowing that e5 is not happening because I could take, but I would rush towards e5. And then he played queen e7, which is typical. The reason I play e5 sometimes is to basically get some access to the square, like knight d2, knight e4. And if he locked it, like for example, if he does this is actually, let's say, so let's say here and here he plays here, this is actually good for white. And it would be a mistake. And the reason you could see that the val bar went up, because this center is very strong. And you could see now, you do have the two bishops, right? Two bishops, but they are not doing much. You know, you look at this and you feel like this is bishops, you know, that's not bishops, they're like pawns. You know, especially bishop g7, right, is not doing much. And also that bishop goes to d7, but it's not doing anything. And that seemed to be the point. White is basically putting like some kind of blockaders was a pawn. And that's actually what I meant by this video, pawn structure. This is exactly what I meant by pawn structure. That pawn structure kind of like unique in a way to stop the activity from the bishop, right? And that's one way, you know, to deal with this kind of stuff in this opening, the Tromposky opening. So I played knight d2 and he played rook d8. This is an attempt. So let's say he wants to take, and this, if you take here, the bishop is hanging on d3. So that's his point. But I played queen c2, and actually this move was on my mind anyway. I was looking at this diagonal anyway. I was looking at this diagonal, and keep an eye on this one. Right, keep an eye on this one for the upcoming moves. This diagonal was on my mind anyway, so when he played rook d8, I was like, well, that was my intention to go to queen c2, so it kind of helped me out. So when he takes, I would still proceed with here, so he doesn't have knight takes. So for example here, you don't have this, right? I mean, this is all protected. As opposed to like a move early, if I were to play, let's say king h1, you're looking at this kind of stuff, right? And then rook takes. This is actually going to be in his favor. That's what he's looking for. And everything here is completely bad. He's up a pawn. e5 is now going to be hanging. So that's not a position you would play for white. So here, Rook d8 was the move. And I play queen c2. So queen c2 is actually the point, is to defend d3, but it's also looking at the diagonal. As I mentioned, this seems to be key the next couple moves. So bishop d7 was a move. I don't understand where he's going with the bishop, and that's the reason why knight c6, this whole plan doesn't feel like it's legitimate plan in a way that makes active position for black. You can see the bishop goes here, but it's not doesn't have too many squares, right? There's no squares to go to. So knight g3. I'm just making room for myself to play on the king side. The whole play now is going to be shifting toward the king side. So I'm looking at knight e2, knight g3, knight f3, and it's time to dance, right? The dancing is coming. I could assure you that. And I'm also making room for here, rook here, rook here. So I get questions like when I make a rook move, like let's say you want to land on e1, which rook move you would pick? And that's actually a very good question, because sometimes you could make the wrong rook move that you might be losing an advantage in one move. My own perspective is if you get this rook over here, it's probably better because the rook at f1 is still acting as a way like I needed here to open. Let's say the f file becomes open, so the rook will be great on this f file. While the other rook will be okay on, they both are within line, that they both acting as a way that they both have, they're contributing towards the center in some way. Like rook e1 is towards the center, rook f1 is still like attacking the f file. If you play this one here, you're going away from the f file. So if there's any kind of break on f file, the rook is already moved from f1 to u1. You could bring the other rook to d1, but you kind of went away from the f file, right? And the point is, this has to stay in the f file in case we open up on the f file, like let's say f5. You probably need some support with a pawn. So that's the reason why I would probably lean toward this. That would be an attractive looking for me than the other rook. Bishop e8. I don't understand the plan. It's more like defense, nothing else. Knight f3, and that's I'm playing towards the king side. The next move will be interesting, right? a6. I couldn't understand that move except b5. He made a lot of pawn moves like d6, a6, and then the next move perhaps will be also almost another pawn. And I think he proceed with b5. There's nothing going on for black. You could see this. He has the two bishops, but nothing is going on. Like nothing is really going on. So next move is h4. What is this? What is this move? It's very simple. h5, and I'm going for an attack. And this is actually, if you look over this whole diagonal, the queen, the bishop, the queen, the knight, and if this were to happen, that's going to be trouble. And you also have some kind of f5, which we'll probably need later. And having the rook on f1, as I mentioned earlier, would be good stuff. Here he played h5. So basically he's saying, well, we stop your h5. And I always tell people to be careful when they make pawn moves. You give weaknesses around, and we do have a weakness. The g5 seems to be a knight could jump to g5. And it's time to dance in a good ways, in a good amount of ways. The point is here, after knight g5, there's a lot of holes going on. There's issues happening. And it's all about what white could do to open up. So white now has potential great position, and it's what to do next. You might have a good position, but what's next? You might be winning, but what is the moves, right? It's always comes down to, like, you might get to a good position if you reach that far, but what to do, right? So the next move doesn't make sense at all for me, like him playing b5. Again, this doesn't contribute. I wasn't even looking at the queen side. I mean, maybe he wants me to react and play e4. The concentration is on the king side. And sometimes the board tells you what to do. Sometimes the game comes down to small details. You play one side on the one side, and it could be the winning side. Your opponent could play on this, the other side that it may not, nothing is happening, and you just ignore it. You could ignore it as long that there's nothing tactical happening. And so b5 here, he could play b4. as far as I'm concerned, and it doesn't really impact the position. White's still in a good situation here. Could you pause the video here and find a good move? Because now, after knight g5 jump, after getting the knight to g3, after lining up here, actually, was it this move, the next move? But I suppose I'm just looking over here. I think there was a move order kind of thing, and I think it may not matter, but it was move. Yeah, I think it was the next move. I was kind of preparing what's going to happen. So yes, I played rook e1. And the point is, this move is really good. You kind of like, in the long term, you're looking at potential e6 stuff happening. Keep an eye on this one. You're also giving a support on e5 should he takes. And that's the point. Let's say he takes here, right? This is actually what I meant by having the two rooks lining up like this. Like the rook on the f file. That's an open file technically, even though the f7 is on the way. But this is huge for white, right? Even though my pawn is blocking access to the other rook, but the other rook is very strong. So it's like a trade-off where the rook, maybe my own pawn is blocking access to one rook, but the other one is super strong, right? You know, this is a really open file. So the next move, he played d5. Yeah, so this is where things are not really good for black. So black basically saying we could lock it. You know, we could basically, you know, block everything. So this is actually block position. When you're dealing with block position or close position, knights perform. You know, the knight could jump. I mean, as a matter of fact, this knight is pretty strong, right? It's very strong. Bishop is not strong. I would probably rate this knight better than these two bishops by far. Because the knight is contributing to some kind of an attack, and this is where the knights perform in, like, you could jump between the pawns, right? Where the bishops need the pawns to be gone, perhaps. It depends on the game, though, to perform. Now, pause the video and see if you could find a good move. So now white reached his all optimal situation. Like I get the two rooks activated. The queen is behind the bishop activated. The knight is good, and you know, all the pieces are moved in. And I also control the center a long time ago. Now it's white's turn to prove what he has, right? Because if you don't have anything, maybe it's a draw because everything is being blocked, right? Or you could play toward the, you know, maybe on the queen side, you know, like, I don't know, a4 or b3. I don't think it's a4, but you know, maybe you want to play on the queen side. But pause the video. Try to consider, you know, possibilities to open up the game, create some ideas, maybe some tactics ideas. If you found the move, honestly, if you have, your tactics is pretty decent. I mean, I would say you're within line of knowing your stuff. If you haven't, and I'm assuming good percentage of people would not find the move, and that's okay. It's okay not finding the good moves, and that's the reason we do these videos and practice. It's nothing wrong to not finding moves. That's the reason we work in our games, right? You need practice. Just because you need practice doesn't take any away from you. It's just simply need more practice. So I'm assuming you guys paused the video. If you found it, that's good. The move is very good though. It's knight takes h5. And, you know, chess.com told me this is brilliant. I mean, I knew ahead of time it's brilliant. That's a good move. So this is actually the reason the knights perform, right? The knight could perform. I mean, it's not necessarily this knight at g3. This is maybe the knight on g3 here. Doesn't have, like, too many squares as opposed to knight g5. But I made it work. I made this knight on g3 work. This is maybe not the active piece, but eventually was able to create some issues. It was actually the one that created the sacrifice, right? What's the point of this sacrifice? I believe here, when I played this move, looking over the board, I was able to see that this is completely over. Like, you know, black has nothing to reply against this move. He simply has to take. Even if he doesn't take, this is you're looking at a lot of things happening, even if he doesn't take. Let's say he goes here, and the problem is maybe you could You could go back in h5. You could always break through. You could bring the other rook to f3, open up, and you could play here, or knight g3, h5, just like I mentioned. And the position is opening up for major attack, right? So he had to take. So people would be like, "Oh, so what's wrong? What happening here?" Remember when I told you guys, keep an eye on this queen and the bishop and this diagonal? That seems to be the issue. It's the diagonal. And here is, he is in check, and he only left with 2 moves, and they are equally bad, I suppose. It doesn't matter what he does. He went with this one. We would go over king h8 because I don't think it's relevant much. She's still like losing, but king f8, I do have the next strong move here, which is f5. So it is true that I'm down a piece, and this kind of style always work. You could sacrifice a piece as long as you have an attack, and this is one attacking opportunity here. You sack a piece, you make use of the attack that you have, and that's the reason why I needed the rook here as well to support f-file. And you could see now things are playing role now. Why this rook played the role here? Why this rook played the role here? So f5 was very strong. You're looking at f6. I mean, f6 or even pawn picks. This is opening up for potential attack. This attack is overwhelming. If you have a lot of pieces against a king like this, you're dealing with the knight, bishop, pawn, rook, and also the queen engaging in some kind of attack against the king. And normally 2 pieces against a lone king, perhaps. It is almost like a lone king here, so it's going to be very difficult to hold. So he was able to play here, and the next move is actually much more stronger here as queen takes. Now the queen is engaging in the attack, and that's actually the issue. So now one of the ideas that I have, let's say he plays a random move here just to explain what seems to be the trouble. There's a lot of moves here, including, first of all, this is a move. This is actually winning right on the spot. You typically, when I look over a position like this, I would look for mate, not so much winning a material is like how I could mate. But if you cannot mate, you go for this one. And this one is very strong because obviously there's a pin here. So the king is stuck on f8, right? And he cannot go to g7, g8. He cannot go to e7. The queen is just sitting on e7. He cannot take the pawn. There's a pin. So that means he has to take. But the problem is I could take back. And that's the reason why the rook is sitting. One of the good reasons why we needed the rook on f1. That's a free queen. And the attack is not over. It's a free queen. The attack is still continues with actually the bishop, the queen, and the rook. 3 pieces. So that's one reason that move cannot be played. He played here, but again, it's the same result that I had to play here. And it just doesn't save the position for him. If we go back and play king h8, though, you could argue that king h8, it is a possibility. I looked at this, and there's a nice move here. Originally, I was considering some kind of f5. This also works. You just simply... So if we think about it, you take here f5. You just play here, and it's the same idea that you could still get to play f6. This is still overwhelming attack. I don't think you could hold this. Once you land to f6, let's say a random move here, once you land to f6, this is over. This is completely over. Overwhelming attack. There's also a nasty line where you could play here and checkmate. Let's say here, this is actually like mate to me. And then the idea is something like here and checkmate. You don't even take the queen. There was also another idea. Supposedly bishop g8 also works. That also works with the idea if you take here and queen check, and then here and f5. That's also very strong. This is overwhelming attack, and it's still f6 or even knight takes in some like. It's more like f6 to me, I think. And then it's just overwhelming attack that he cannot really stop. And it just simply be like completely... it's a resignation here considering the level of play. Like it's basically 2600 against 27, and we both know what's going on here. So here he resigned. He basically resigned in this situation. As soon as I played knight e6. So that was a nice game to explain. It does have pawn structure to explain the pawn structure, how it does play a role, and you could see this pawn structure here was able to perform nicely against two bishops, and also how I was able to play around here, making use of my only inactive knight, which seems, if you do the comparison here, this is very active, this is very active, this is active, this is active, this is active, except the knight here, and I was able to sacrifice the one piece that seems to be the less active and make it work on h5 by sacrificing on h5. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. This one is very learning experience in a good way. It's combining some stuff, right? Like the pawn structure, as I explained, the tactic on h5 and the break, and also the opening, right? So hopefully you guys enjoyed this content and keep tuned for more videos. We should be having more videos coming in, more educational ones. Stay tuned.